What if $1 billion stealth jet could be spotted by something that costs less than a family car? That sounds like clickbait, but it's exactly the tension shaping modern air combat. For decades, stealth was sold as near-invisibility. Aircraft like the Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II, the Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor, and the Northrop Grumman B-2 Spirit were engineered to slip through radar nets, strike, and leave before anyone knew they were there. But the battlefield doesn't stand still. While stealth aircraft became more refined and more expensive, detection technology spread, diversified, and, most importantly, got cheaper. Today, the real story isn't stealth versus radar. It's high-cost stealth versus low-cost detection, and that changes everything. Before we get into how low-tech systems are challenging stealth, we need to reset a myth. Stealth does not make an aircraft invisible. It never did. What it does is reduce the distance at which a radar can detect, track, and target that aircraft. Think of it like lowering the volume of a sound in a noisy room. The sound is still there, but it's harder to pick out. That delay, those extra seconds or minutes before detection, can be the difference between survival and destruction. That's the advantage stealth buys, not invisibility. Time. So how did stealth get so good in the first place? It comes down to shaping, materials, and discipline. Stealth aircraft are designed with carefully aligned surfaces that scatter radar energy away from the source. Their edges are sharp and consistent. Their weapons are carried internally, and their engine faces are hidden deep inside the fuselage, so they don't act like mirrors. On top of that, they use radar-absorbent materials that convert some incoming energy into heat instead of reflecting it. The result is a dramatically reduced radar cross-section. To many traditional radars, a stealth jet doesn't look like a fighter at all. It looks like noise. That design philosophy worked brilliantly against the radar systems it was built to defeat, primarily high-frequency, narrowband radars optimized for precision tracking. But here's the catch. Those aren't the only radars in the sky anymore, and they're not even the most interesting ones. Low-frequency radar systems, operating in VHF and UHF bands, play by different rules. Their wavelengths are much longer, which means they interact with an aircraft's overall shape rather than its fine details. Instead of being neatly deflected, some of that energy can resonate across the aircraft's body, making it more detectable. Now, these radars are not great at pinpoint accuracy. They can't guide a missile on their own, but they don't need to. Their job is to say, something is out there. Once that happens, more precise sensors can be cued to look in the right place. This is where the concept of a network comes in. Modern air defense doesn't rely on a single radar anymore. It uses multiple sensors, different frequencies, different locations, different perspectives, all feeding into a shared picture. This is called a multi-static or networked radar environment, and it's one of the biggest challenges stealth has ever faced. Now add another layer, passive detection. Traditional radar emits energy and listens for reflections. Passive systems don't emit anything. They listen for disturbances in the environment. That could be radio signals bouncing off an aircraft, commercial broadcasts being distorted, or even the aircraft's own emissions. Because they don't transmit, they're extremely hard to detect and target. And many of these systems are relatively inexpensive compared to high-end military radars. Then there's infrared. Every aircraft produces heat. Engines burn fuel, air compresses over the skin, and electronic systems generate thermal signatures. Infrared search and track systems, IRSD, look for that heat. They don't care about radar cross-section. They care about temperature contrast. A stealth aircraft can reduce its heat signature with clever design, burying engines, mixing exhaust with cool air, shaping the nozzle, but it cannot eliminate it. And modern IRSD sensors are getting better at picking out those faint signatures at longer distances. So now we have a picture of the detection side. Low-frequency radar to get a hint. Networked sensors to refine the picture. Passive systems to stay hidden. Infrared to exploit heat. None of these systems alone is perfect, but together, they create something powerful, a layered detection environment. This is where the low-tech part becomes interesting. Not all of these systems are cutting-edge or expensive. Some are based on older radar concepts that were once sidelined. Others are commercially derived technologies adapted for military use. And some are simply cheap enough to deploy in large numbers. That's the key. You don't need one perfect sensor if you can have many good enough, one's working together. And that leads to a strategic shift. In the past, a stealth aircraft might have faced a limited number of high-end radar sites. Avoid those, and you're safe. Today, the sky can be filled with sensors, fixed, mobile, airborne, even improvised. The probability of detection increases not because any single system is unbeatable, but because there are so many of them. Does this mean stealth is obsolete? No, but it does mean its role is changing. Stealth still reduces detection range. It still complicates tracking. It still forces the enemy to work harder, coordinate more, and commit more resources. And that has value. A lot of value. But it's no longer a magic shield. It's one part of a larger equation. That's why aircraft like the F-35 were designed not just as stealth platforms, but as information platforms. The F-35 doesn't rely on being unseen. It relies on seeing first, understanding faster, and acting smarter. Its sensors fuse data from radar, infrared, electronic signals, and external sources into a single picture for the pilot. It can share that picture with other aircraft, with ground units, with command centers. It becomes a node in a network. This is where the green coin engineering truth comes in. The future of survivability is not just about hiding. It's about managing information. If you know where the threats are, you can route around them. If you can confuse or jam their sensors, you can degrade their picture. If you can coordinate with other platforms, you can shift the fight in your favor. Even against low-cost detection systems, this matters. A cheap sensor might detect something, but turning that into a reliable track, then into a firing solution, then into a successful intercept, that's a chain. And every link in that chain can be disrupted. Still, the economics are hard to ignore. If a system that costs a few $1,000s can contribute to detecting an aircraft that costs over $100 million, the balance of power starts to look different. It doesn't mean the cheap system wins outright. It means the expensive system has to justify itself in a more complex environment. And this is where doctrine and tactics come back into play. Stealth aircraft don't fly alone into dense sensor fields hoping not to be seen. They operate with support, electronic warfare aircraft, decoys, cyber operations, and standoff weapons. They exploit gaps, timing, and confusion. They don't need to be invisible everywhere. They need to be effective where it matters. There's also a psychological factor. The myth of invisibility created a sense of dominance. Challenging that myth changes how both sides think. Defenders invest more in diverse detection. Attackers invest more in countermeasures and networking. The result is an arms race, not just in hardware, but in concepts. Let's make this concrete. Imagine a stealth aircraft approaching a defended area. A low-frequency radar detects a faint anomaly at long range. It's not precise, but it's enough to raise an alert. That cue is passed to other sensors. A higher-frequency radar scans the sector. An IRSD system looks for heat. A passive receiver listens for emissions. Individually, each system sees fragments. Together, they begin to form a picture. Now the stealth aircraft responds. It adjusts its route. It uses electronic warfare to introduce noise. It times its approach to coincide with other signals, civilian traffic, weather clutter, friendly decoys. It shares data with other platforms, building its own picture of the threat. The engagement becomes a contest of processing, timing, and deception. That's modern air combat. Not invisible jets versus blind radars, but networks versus networks. So when you hear that low-tech detection is defeating stealth, take it as a signal, not a verdict. It signals that the environment is getting more complex. That simple narratives, like invisible or undetectable, don't hold up. That success now depends on integration. And integration is where advanced systems still have an edge. The F-35's strength is not just its shape or its coatings. It's its ability to collect, fuse, and distribute information. It can act as a sensor for other platforms. It can guide weapons launched from outside the threat zone. It can adapt in real time. At the same time, the spread of low-cost sensors means that no platform can rely on a single advantage. Redundancy, flexibility, and coordination become essential. The side that can integrate more effectively across air, ground, sea, and space will have the upper hand. So where does that leave stealth? Not dead, not defeated, but evolving. Stealth becomes one layer in a multi-layered approach to survivability. It buys time and reduces risk. It makes detection harder, not impossible. And in combination with electronic warfare, networking, and tactics, it still provides a meaningful advantage. But the days of thinking about stealth as a cloak of invisibility are over. The real game is about controlling the detection timeline. Who sees first? Who understands first? Who acts first? If you're into the deep engineering behind how these systems actually work, radar physics, infrared tracking, electronic warfare, subscribe and stick around. Because the next phase of this story is even more interesting. How artificial intelligence is being used to sift through all that sensor data and find patterns humans would miss. And that brings us to the final question. In a world where cheap sensors are everywhere and networks connect everything, what matters more, being hard to see or being smarter than the system trying to find you? Let me know what you think in the comments.